Good morning, friend. Welcome back to the Morning Minute Meditation. I'm interested today in the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 11, verse 3. The Apostle Paul said, "But I fear lest that by any means, as the serpent beguiled Eve through his subtlety, so your minds should be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ." In other words, the Apostle Paul said this business of loving and serving God ought to be simple. But because of Satan and his beguiling nature, he has complicated the things of God to the place and point where it must be governed in totality by rule after rule after rule. When we consider the law of Moses, Moses was told by God to bring the children of Israel to the bottom of Mount Sinai. And in Exodus 20, God spoke the 10 Commandments to them, and they ran off and said, "We don't want to hear it." So God called Moses up onto the mountain. He went to Sinai. He wrote the 10 Commandments in stone, gave them to Moses, and then under those 10 subcategories, if you will, or categories of law, there were 613 commandments that were developed in what we call Moses' Law. A bunch of rules. The truth is, the rules never did govern the people into righteousness, and rules never do. But because man is selfish and egocentric, man has to be governed by rules. The truth is, if man loved God and loved his neighbor as himself, America would not have to be governed by the multiplicity of rules that are on state and federal law books. Why does man do this? Why does man have to have all of these laws? Because man is sinful and egocentric and a selfish individual who is right in his own eye. I love the game of basketball, or at least I did as a young man. James A. Naismith invented basketball in 1891. There were 12 little simple rules, and he invented the game specifically for this purpose: for young people to get exercise and to have a good time. He never foresaw what basketball would become. Now, because basketball is a multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry in the NCAA and in the NBA, it must be and has to be governed by rules because of the egocentric nature of what's going on with inside of the basketball world. Take, for instance, the NBA rule book. It is broken down into 14 categories. In the first 7 categories, there are 302 rules in the first 7 categories. Only half the book has 302 rules. Why? Because you have men who are playing for a paycheck, and they're egocentric and selfish in nature, and it is a business. No longer does it have the purity that Naismith intended for it to have. All of that in consideration. Christians today are governed by rules, denomination to denomination and church to church. They're governed by a set of rules. But rules don't make you righteous before God. Jesus boiled down the whole duty of man in this respect in the book of Mark, chapter number 12, verse 30. He said, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind, and with all thy strength." And he said, "This is the first commandment." In other words, if a man were to do that in the purity of loving God and in the simplicity of loving God, he wouldn't have to have a bunch of rules. He wouldn't have to have rules that governed his integrity and character, and he wouldn't have any issue with lying and stealing and cheating. He wouldn't have any issue with dressing immodestly, because the love of God in his heart would govern every area of life. Hey, do you have to be ruled by rules, or is righteousness the only rule of life, and it governs all other? Consider these things today, friend. Have a great day.